Dangerous deceiver turns into a killer. Lois Riess is now in prison for the rest of her life. Hello again, everyone. I'm Chris Safadi.
And I'm Lois Tomey. She killed her husband, then a woman on Fort Myers Beach in 2018. The killer grandmother got away from authorities, going state to state before getting caught in Texas.
She thought she would get away with assuming the identity of Miss Hutchinson. That didn't work. And then she switches back and uses her own identity when she's gambling in Louisiana. And then she goes to Texas and she reuses the identity. I mean, it was laughable what she did, but thank God she was caught before she did something to a victim over in Texas.
Only Wink News anchor Corey Lazar sits down with the chief assistant state attorney for all the twists and turns it took to take down Lois Riess and how she only has herself to blame for being caught.
It is definitely one of the most bizarre cases that I've ever dealt with.
And bizarre doesn't even cut it.
To have this woman who looked like your neighbor, looked like your grandma, and to come down from Minnesota and pick out a poor unsuspecting victim who trusted people. Our victim in that case at Fort Myers Beach, she just trusted people. And she paid with her life.
In 2018, Lois Riess murdered her husband in Minnesota.
How can such a nice person turn into such a monster?
Then took off, traveling to Fort Myers Beach.
Look very familiar.
And that's where she killed Pamela Hutchinson, a woman she just met.
She could be anywhere at this time.
Riess then took off again to Texas.
It was almost a comedy of errors after that, which it's not funny, but you know, the way that Lois worked her way over to the Gulf Coast in Texas, leaving trails and evidence all over the place.
She pretty much did everything you're not supposed to do.
She did everything she's not supposed to do.
I sat down with Chief Assistant State Attorney Rich Montecalvo, who says the evidence against Riess lined up perfectly. The grandmother seemingly made no effort to hide her identity or even hide it all.
The case was put together with what we call the silent witness, which was the video evidence was just devastating for her.
Riess's picture was snapped in all kinds of places: casinos, hotels, banks, even as she befriended her victim, Pamela Hutchinson, at a bar on Fort Myers Beach.
And that's the tragedy for me.
And you see that because she befriended Lois Riess so fast.
Absolutely.
And they started hanging out at her house so fast.
They hung out at the condo where that was rented, and they hung out at the bar. We have the video of them hanging out, sitting there just enjoying life.
April 5th, 2018, you can see Hutchinson sitting here with Lois Riess at a bar on the beach. It was the last day Hutchinson was seen alive. Then, days later, Pamela Hutchinson was found murdered inside this condo building. And once again, Lois Riess was recorded on camera walking around these hallways. Another huge part of closing this case was looking at how Lois Riess killed Pamela Hutchinson and her husband.
There were actual similarities to the murder in Fort Myers Beach as opposed to the murder in Minnesota. We were able to use some of the similarities, the gunshot wound, the closed gunshot wound that both victims suffered. We were able to trace that back. We were working with the Minnesota authorities. They were very helpful in giving us like a snapshot of what this woman was like, what their relationship was, her and her husband.
So you believe she shot the gun almost the same way in
yes,
both times?
Yes.
And Montecalvo says Riess even used a pillow to muffle the sound in both shootings. After a month-long manhunt, Riess was captured in South Padre Island, Texas, on a bar's surveillance camera. Our team traveled there right after she was taken down and spoke to the restaurant employee who called 911 when he recognized Riess.
She flicked it on like this, and that's what it picked me up, was the color of her hair.
Do you think she would have killed again?
It's possible. It's really possible. She had befriended a woman there. She had befriended a woman like she had befriended Miss Hutchinson here in Fort Myers Beach. Who knows?
Montecalvo also told me Lois Riess's gambling problem was much larger than people realized. And we still don't have the why in this case, why she decided to kill. But she pleaded guilty to her husband's murder and to Pamela Hutchinson's on Fort Myers Beach. Back to you.
Now, Wink News has tried to talk with Lois Riess. She denied our request for an interview. She's serving a life sentence without the possibility of parole in Minnesota.